Hello, everyone. I wanted to show off how to do the Davinci Resolve photo page in the new beta. So, many of you know Davinci Resolve is a very powerful color system, color grading platform, plus NLE, plus some basic motion graphics and VFX, plus some basic audio mixing through Fairlight. Very comprehensive all-in-one platform, but it began as a color correction platform. And now we have the ability to not only do color correction on video, but raw stills, which is something that I have been hoping they would add for a long time. I do believe within the feature request that they have every time you download the new versions, that is a feature that I have personally put in a request for. We're going to be working with Sony photos in ARW format. They're going to be debayering into sgamut3.cine. And you begin by just on your ingest page, your media page. You pull things in like you would normally for a clip. It goes into your master bin. And then we go over to our photo page. And now we can preview each of our photos. There are some basic controls here. I would avoid doing any of the adjustments or like the audio balance or anything such as that. With this, because it is not great. You know, the tools are very limited. I would prefer to do everything within the actual color page within Resolve. But let's pick a shot that's good, that I like. What is a good shot that would be worth showing this off? I know a lot of people are like, oh, Billy, you have really cool photos. Not every photo I take is really cool. Only the ones I post. So, I always like the shot of this train. It's kind of cool when it comes across. Yeah, let's do this. We'll do this train shot. And so you take the photos that you want, and you drag them to the bottom here. What you'll actually see is if you go to the timeline page, it puts them on the timeline. You cannot manipulate or even delete these from the timeline, though. You'll have to do it through the photo page. Let's see. Oh, that's another good photo. Is this the one of the boat? Yeah, I like this one too, the boat. Le bout. I'm going to rotate this though because the angle of which my hand was not exactly even. So we are gonna do a little bit of cleanup on this using this page, but I wouldn't mess with any of the color correction settings in this page. Cool. Let's get like one or two more. I like the Lonely Truck. The Lonely Truck is a good one. I don't know what Alouette is in my brain. Alouette, gentil Alouette. I guess some of the rain in Osaka. It's kind of a neat one. Yeah, that's a neat one. So we'll do these four. So then we hop over to our color page and we have all four, and we can access our raw controls and we can manipulate everything basically the same way that we would with footage in Resolve. So I have been a big fanboy lately of Genesis. So I'm going to do all of my corrections within Genesis. And while it's tiny on my screen here, you know, the preview monitor within software, if we actually look at the preview, hold on. If we actually look at the preview monitor, if we actually look over at my external monitor on the left, you know, it is filling out from top to bottom a very large area. So I would not recommend working with photos in Resolve if you do not have an external monitor. One of the fun things about Genesis is there's two ways to work with it. You can do transform controls that act almost like camera corrections, and then you have, you know, within you have your printer points that you can use for like post transform corrections. We can enable halation, we can enable grain. It's great, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. I like the software. But what I'm going to do is there's a specific. I'm stumbling all over myself. There's a specific look I'm going for, so I'm going to do EXR into the Eastman, the LC 5385, And I'm going to just kind of pull this up so that we get like more of a healthy exposure here. And then what I'm going to do, because this is supposed to be TK, but I want to do a shortcut for TK, I'm going to do bada bing. And I go poop. And then I'm going to go bada boom. And then I'm going to go boop. And then I delete this. And now we can just work our print. And we have what is essentially, effectively, a scanned print. A print scan, if you will. Now this image is very, very noisy and grainy, even without the addition of the Genesis grain. The reason for that is because it's a ridiculously high ISO. I do believe, let's see if we can go back and get that info from this. Hold on. We'll do find a media pool, and then we should be able to go back here, and it'll pop up here. 1600. It's not actually that high of an ISO. It's just noisy for some reason. Sony cams, not always great in low light. But it's not a big deal because we can do noise reduction on this using our spatial noise reduction. And we just kind of pulled it. Now to control contrast, we'll come over here and we'll just do our push and pull controls. And then I'm also going to get a little bit of pop of saturation. I'm going to use the interlayer effect and kind of increase saturation slightly. And we get something that looks like this, and I kind of dig it. It's neat. It's a little soft because I've done the noise reduction, so I am going to now go one more node over and just pop a little sharpness back. See? Bada bing. But I dig it. I dig the look. I dig the vibe. I dig. And so what I'll do is I'll just copy this, and then I'll paste this across all of them. And I know that the settings are not going to be the same. They're not going to be correct for it, but that's fine. Let's turn noise reduction off. Let's turn the sharpness off. We'll just go back over here. We'll zero out our printer points. We'll also zero out our push-pull process and our interlayer effect. All right. So now let's go until we get like a nice midpoint, and then we'll do push and pull so we can control contrast. We'll find a better midpoint here, bada boom, and then we will use our printer points to get what we want. And then I want more saturation, so interlayer effect. I'm gonna just boost to hell and back on this one, so we get that nice little look there. Alternatively, if we wanted to do a more clean, less messy look for this, we wanted something where, we're not getting a lot of color mixing and a lot of color bleed. We wanted something that was more clean. I'm just going to duplicate this and then turn the original one off. Just so you know what we did. Like, this is the one I masked with. This is a duplicate. So what I'll do is I will cut all the effects that I just did. Everything will be zeroed out, aside from our, black and white points here. What I'll do is I'll go one node after. I'm going to do a saturation. We'll do 65 on this. And then I'll go here and I'll just use offset. And I'll push my offset up to get the exposure that I want on it. And then we can still control contrast. Just like we were doing with our push-pull processing, we can still have a contrast control. Get that where we want. And we can push, our white balance or tinting where we want. A little bit more of that contrast out. Let's push our exposure a little bit. Maybe add some of that contrast back. It is a little bit of a back and forth thing. And then I'll go one more node before. And now we can actually do stuff with power windows if we want. So I can come in and I can do a power window here, like a gradient down. Just kind of pull that. I could also actually, for this, I think it'd be better to do curves and then just kind of like sketch out roughly where the sky is here, and then soften inside, pull it down more. More on the inside, more softness. More on the inside. Let's reduce contrast slightly. And you can get, something that feels a bit more polished. I mean, obviously, like the grain from Genesis is very high because I have it at 1, so I can drop that down to 0.5. And now we can end up with something that's a little more polished. I do like the little the sharpness pop on it, though. It does feel nice. But you can do all kinds of fun stuff with it, You can get color bleed and make it feel all gritty and dirty, and you can do less gritty and dirty stuff with it. If I wanted to, I could drop out of doing the TK look, and I can just do a print look. So we'll do EXR since I got EXR going up here. We'll do EXR to EXR. We'll zero these out. Finagle and finesse our stuff. I like this shot because I've done this shot before in DxO Photo Lab. I like it being more of like a tealish with a slight green push, like teal-ish, but more green than teal. I think it helps bring out the feeling of the rain. I'm actually going to drop exposure, but then I'm going to do a push-pull effect. No, I think I'll leave it with default contrast. Maybe bleach bypass it. Oh, yeah, we're getting something there. I'll do some bleach bypass on that. I like that. I dig that. I'm going to have to offset the blue that it's adding, but that's fine. Offset the blue by pulling some blue out, get it more greeny. Let's do 50% on the bypass, and then we'll get that there. I'm digging that. Let's mess with the inner layer now. Not digging that. I'll just do saturation as a post Genesis node. We'll just increase saturation a little bit. We'll do 65 again. Let's go check our vector scope. We are well within range. We are like nowhere near being an issue. And then for this one, I actually do want it to feel more dirty and gritty. So I'm going to crank the grain up on it. And then I'll pop my sharpness node. Maybe sharpness node, no. Sharpness node, yes. Grain slightly back some. We'll do 1.5. Just leave it at 1. Yeah, leave it at 1. We got our photo here. And then for this one, I think I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna do let's do Rela. Do Rela into 2393 because then you get like a nice little teal push. Because Rela's expecting one of the Fuji stocks. Same with the turn. It's expecting one of the Fuji print stocks to like offset that teal push. I think Eterna may actually have a better teal push. No, Rela's got the most of like that green push. But just for an example, like let me show you. So the Fuji stocks kind of neutralize like that greenish push. But 2393 actually like sort of accentuates it because it's 2383 you kind of see it, but 2393 actually has a bit more green saturation than 2383 does, at least in Genesis. So we can kind of, because I like how warm this gets too. I like the sodium vapor kind of vibes for this. I know that's not exactly the lighting we had; it was more tungsten balanced, but I like that sodium vapor look. That like really punchy warmth. Yeah, I'm actually gonna do a pull process on it. So that's a really high contrast, really dense feeling. And then I'm gonna drop the grain back to 0.5, pop my sharpness on, and it's nice. It's very nice. I dig it. Once again, this is using like contact print, motion picture stock emulation for stills, which is interesting conundrum or an interesting um, oxymoron, I guess, is a good way of saying it. Um, if we want to do like actual stills emulation, there's always Filmbox Pro, which has some stills in it. Dehancer has some stills in it too, so we can go and do um, select 3S Game at 3 Cine, and then we will do. Let's do some reversal. We'll do some slides, and I'll do full, and we'll pick Velvia because Velvia has amazing saturation. And so we'll just get our exposure up here. And once again, just like we did with Genesis, you can work beneath beneath the node. I do believe that Filmbox explicitly states that their camera controls are the same as the global, so they recommend that you use the global controls for if you're going to work the beneath the node. We'll do exposure here like this. We'll kind of warm it up slightly. We'll also add a little bit of magenta to it if I can grab the thing. Then we'll come down to the lab and we'll actually increase our vibrancy. No, it's richness. Richness. Just seeing what each one does. Vibrancy. One of these is like pre-saturation. One of these is post-saturation. I think richness is post-saturation. So I'll do richness. I'm going to actually pull this down some, and then I'm going to do contrast. We're going to pull the contrast. What is, I forget exactly the push-pull. Yeah, it's just low-end contrast. For push-pull process, you're reducing the low-end contrast, not the overall contrast. Reduce overall contrast on it. And then, printer lights, we have these as well, just like we did in Genesis. There's a little bit of crosstalk, but it's more that you're working between the print and the negative simulation because you can separate them, or in this case, the actual film and then the contrast saturation controls. You're working in logarithmic space is essentially what I'm trying to say. The one thing I wish that you could do in Filmbox is I wish you could gang your printer lights, and because they do actually change your exposure, right? And so I'd love to have a way to gang them like you do in Genesis and just print with the printer lights versus having to use the camera controls for that. But that's fine. It is what it is. And so this is, I feel it's a little, it's not saturated enough for Velvia. I feel like Velvia would be like really saturated like this almost. You also have split tone controls in here, which is neat. So you can do like, hey, I cross-processed this, or hey, I used, like cadmium or something in the developer, or I put, like some funky chemical bath as a step in my development chain. You can do all that stuff, and it's fun to play around with. Let's do instead of a 135 slide, we'll do C41 negatives. Do full paper. So I was just looking at my options. They break it down into like portrait, classic, vivid, retro, cine, stylized. Just do portrait. What was it? Yeah, no. Okay, so for reversal, it's just one set of options. We'll do cine still. Stylized is going to be like your X-rays and shit. Vivid is, yeah, Ektar, Limo Color, Classic, Superior, Protomage, Color Plus Gold, Fuji Color, Ultramax. I remember shooting some Ultramax and Ilford 400. Ilfo Color. A lot of people just think of Ilford as being like a black and white. And then Portrait is just Pro 400H and then three different Portrait stocks. Shot a lot of Pro 400H, weirdly enough, in my time. Um, and so yeah, that's kind of what we get here. For this, let's see if we can find like a good. Let's do gold. No. Fuji Color, no. Oh, yeah, there is one black and white in here. XP2 400 is black and white. I have no idea why it's here, not in the black and white stocks, but you know, it's whatever. Superior. Oh, Superior might work. Just going through. Yeah, Superior. With the lifted black level, that'll work. Let's go to the lab. We'll do a push, pull. We'll do a pull process. And then I will sort of try to finagle that greenish teal back that I had before. And then we'll do maybe some split toning to kind of accent it a little bit. Something like that almost, yeah. That feels moody and wet and rainy. And then this one, honestly, I'm probably just going to jack this and yeah, drop that in. And then maybe do like a split tone on this, but I'm going to do, yeah, we'll do the warm split tone. Find our pivot points. All right, I'm just checking out what exactly is being done with each setting. Yeah, we'll do that. Just a slight little thing. We'll end up with this, and so you know we have completely different options that we can do with film box, or we can do dehancer if we wanted to, or we can just manually grade it old school style, where we're like contrast, pivot, offset. I should think the contrast pivot offset workflow is very underrated. Um, used to be more common with DI than it is in like the digital age. There are a lot of early digital, people would do something similar with. Um, but it's very fast to get a usable image. And then if you need to do cleanup, like, oh no, I've got like a ton of tint in the low end on this. Ooh, gotta legalize, gotta legalize, gotta legalize. You can just boop, boop. Now we're legal. Now we're legal. Now we're legal. And then there's even more old school, like TK style, where you're like lift, gamma, gain for everything. I'm all blue. I'm all blue. Lots of different ways you can do looks. You don't have to just do it with the basic stuff. Presets, LUTs, you don't need those. You just need to make your own. Go. I mean, they're fine too. I'm not anti-lookup table. I'm not anti-LUT, but there are people who are like, don't use LUTs. Don't use them. Just do your own thing, bro. Just do it, and that's cool. I mean, a lot of the most talented colorists I know will actually tell you to not use lookup tables for everything. Yeah, do all kinds of stuff in all kinds of different ways. And of course, if you want to do, color managed workflows, you can also do like, there's ACES. We can do ACES CCT. So we'll do slog into CCT, and then we'll do CCT. Where is CCT? We'll do CCT out to our display, which is Rec 709, or in this case BT 1886. And then we can just use offset here for like, you know, exposure and for tinting. And we can be like, and then I'm gonna uncap or contrast as an S curve, make it a linear contrast, and then I'll just pop some contrast. Well, actually no, because it doesn't clamp enough on the bottom, so I will do S curve contrast. My bad. And maybe even saturate it a little bit more. I'll also saturate it in log though, so I'll do, yeah, like that. It's not bad. Well, it's a little dark. That's not bad. If you want to add texture, you know, we could do a node here. We got the grain controls. We got film grain, 35, 400, very subtle by default. I like to change it from overlay into custom, which makes it very visible, but then we can pull back the opacity on it and get more granular control. And then you can go one node before. We can do our halation. Make sure that you have it set for AP1, because that's what ACES CCT is using. And then we want to mess with our threshold. So we want to make sure that we are more or less only affecting the area that, you know, would actually be halated. And then we pull our strength back, because by default it's very strong. I also want to do more of a spread, so actually let's crank that up and get a good control over our spread. So I want to do a wide spread, but a low strength. So it's just a very subtle effect. There you go. You know, a lot of people think that halation is just that like red refraction where it bounces off the back of the camera body and re-exposes the red layer. But no, it doesn't just re-expose the red layer. That, if you have no remjet, is the most visible thing that happens. But halation is actually a re-exposure of all the layers of dye. And so it should affect all the layers of dye based upon, you know, what is the most transparent part of the image after you print it, which would also be the most exposed part in the negative. So, you know, because it's inverted, you know, the more exposed part is actually really dense and black looking in the negative, but then when you print it, it's the opposite. It's the least exposed the print, and so it's the most transparent, the print. Yeah. You know, and then like black exposes transparent in the negative, which is why you can do double exposure and have some fun, cool things like that. Like, you know, her dress here, like if this were negative, I could roll it back, re-expose again, have something here, and it would actually expose for where the dress is, because it's a very dark dress. So it's, you know, wow. Yeah, that's just isolating and showing us where our threshold for halation is. Bleh, that's ugly posterized. Yeah, if you're not careful, you can get posterization with the film halation stuff. Honestly, this tool I don't find as good to work with as I do the stuff that you get out of like Filmbox and all. Davinci does have the film look creator built in. It is okay. It's just okay. But what I like doing is complete clean slate. Make sure that we are in the right color space, in the right color space. You can also use this for color management as well. I'll get into that in a second. But clean slate means nothing is being done. Like you can turn it on and off. It's completely transparent, right? So now I can come on and I can choose what I want. I just want the bloom, I just want the green, and I just want the halation, right? And we can remove it from highlights only so it's actually accurate and doing more than just highlights, or you can leave it for highlights only if you want. But yeah, it just adds a nice bit of texture to the image. If you were to use it for color management, I'm just going to grab a still here. So we'll just take all of our stuff except for the film look creator. We'll do our input. We'll do slog3. We'll do sgamut 3. Cine. We'll go out to Rec 709. Rec 709. And now we can do all of our color settings. So we can do our film look here, which is, quote unquote, cinematique. But for now, I'm just going to show you, you have exposure, contrast. You can control like your highlight roll off or your highlight level. You can control your highlight roll off, plus like where the highlights actually are. Like, do they clip hard or not? I think this is more of like a clipping point. This highlight control by default. Yeah. So it's almost like a soft clip. You have fade, which is like a soft clip on the bottom. You have the fade roll off. So you're literally doing the same stuff. If you've ever used soft clip, like, you're basically messing with like this, and then you roll off, and then your low controls for that as well. So it's basically that. White balance, tint, saturation, richness. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's doing color boost. And then you have a bleach bypass control. So like you do have a lot of the same controls that you have within, say, Genesis. The issue that I have with it is that it's not. It's the lack of specificity. And I'll show you that. You also have split tone, which is what you get with, say, Filmbox. You can choose your hue angle and everything. So it's very similar to Filmboxes. I have a feeling that this plugin was actually inspired by what they were seeing in Filmbox, because of how popular Filmbox is with a lot of colorists. You even changed the output white point, and you have like actual chromatic coordinates you can do. So we can do like DCI. We can do like D55. We can even pick like the ASUS white point, which I'm not exactly sure what that is, because to me it just looks like D65, but like a little different. We can pick status A. We can pick status C. We can do like F9. A lot of these are for like stripping away orange masks and shit when you're dealing with film scans. We'll keep it at D55. Then you have like a film look blend here, which is where you actually get your. So let's go default 35 millimeter, and then I'll just up the exposure on this, and I'll show you what the film looks are doing. We have like cinematic. We have Rochester. We have Akasaka. We have elated. We have vintage, and we have aurora. And I'm honestly not entirely sure what film stocks these are supposed to be. Vintage I find to be fun because it has this like strong green tint to it, and it's very low contrast. So of the ones built in, this is the one I think I personally like the most. And you can, it honestly does feel like kind of old school, like old-ish, faded, if you will. And then for like this particular thing to hit the look that we were going for before, I would just do like a cooler white balance and then sort of get that tealishness to it. And then maybe pull exposure slightly and then up contrast slightly. So let's up contrast by a lot, yeah. Maybe bleach bypass it a little bit. Yeah. That's cool. I actually like that a lot. we can then take it and kind of reset it for something less dramatic, less oomphy and strong. So we'll just offset our tint here. We'll warm this up a little. And you see the white point is like very green. I think that's the thing that makes it feel kind of like old to me, like old classic filmic. So what I'll do to offset that is I'm actually going to do can't really do it with this. So I just do D65. I'm actually going to go and do a chromatic adaptation thing here. And what we'll do is we'll do D65. So we'll do DCI to D65. And then I'll come back and I'll correct for that. The white balance. You get something kind of like that, you know. It's like I said, it's different. I don't necessarily know if it's more or less filmic than anything. It reminds me kind of like Ares Film Lab. So if we come over here, we can do we'll do S-Log3, Estimate 3 Cine. That's the Venice version. We'll do that into Ares log C3. And then we'll just come over here on the back side because Ares is expecting the classic LUT. So we'll do classic, I hit the wrong one. Do the classic K1S1 Ares transform. And then, within this, we have a little bit of control for like texture and all, but they're really, really expecting you to, do your thing. As like a normal grade. Because S-Log3 is like Cineon compliant, but it's also like you get like a really strong toe lift whenever you do offset. So I was trying to avoid the toe lift, but I also kind of like it, to be honest. Kind of like the toe lift. It's nice. But yeah, so within this, you have Premiere, you have Classic, you have Live, you have Reversal, you have Bleach Bypass settings. Maybe if I go, because I think the toe is being clamped as well. Yeah, the toe is being clamped more by the film simulator than anything else. We have Premiere, Classic, Live, Reversal, Bleach Bypass. Classic is probably my favorite for the same reason it was in the other. It's lower contrast and it's softer and more like, oomphy. Also, I'm in the wrong setting here. Need log C3, not 4. Like, honestly, it's not doing as much as I thought it would be. I think the other ones do more. Not really. It's all very subtle. Anyway, it's cool. It's part of Ares reveal color system technically, which is why it prefers to be in log C4. But it has some quirks, and just like the Blackmagic Design film look creator, it's more about like vibes than it is any sort of profile or accuracy. The two that I haven't shown off, well, 3 technically. I haven't shown off Compass. Compass is cool. So it's essentially taking your digital and converting it into proper Cineon with like a negative-esque color space. And so we actually then can work it like it's DI, and it's going to look and react more like a DI. Now, is it accurate to any specific film stock? No, this is Cullen Kelly's thing. It's more of like film-ish than it is like, oh, this is an actual stock. That's one of the reasons why I wish that they would do a DI log out from Genesis so that you could do like a printing density or like a, Cineon compliant log output from Genesis to work, like a DI would. But effectively, this is to solve issues with um, print lookup tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just like time this a little bit. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit, right? So we have here, actually, I'll do it to make it more fair. I'll work the original file, the original color pre-transform, the S-log. But like, I'll do a side-by-side comparison in a second. So instead of doing this, I'm just going to do CST. We'll do out to Cineon, and then we'll do in with S-log3 and schema3, and then we'll do out with. Actually, I think he might be using Aries log C3. Yeah, he is using Aries log C3 as his printing density. Smart. There's reasons for that. I'm not going to get into that now, but Colin Kelly's smart. There are some big reasons to use log C3 as your compliant Cineon transform rather than doing the red log film transform, which is what Cineon is set for in the CST. Anyway, you can see there are differences between them in terms of like density and color. One of the reasons is because you can, not with this footage, but you can get artifacts and weird saturation issues and even some color hue shifting where when using print simulations and you're doing like print proofing, but you're using just like a regular CST transform, then it will end up potentially with the like trees turning more orange instead of being green. They'll actually lose their green color and have this really strong orange push. One of the things too you may notice though is all the film simulations are very desaturated. There's less saturation involved in film simulation than you're probably used to seeing and what you might be expecting from footage transforms, and that is just the way that film simulations work. They're trying to fit a lot into a little space, and so in doing so, they might, intentionally or unintentionally be a little less saturated than say standard Rec. 709 transform would be in terms of how they appear to the end user. And yeah, that's my little breakdown on the photo page. For exports, you have quick export here. You can just pick PNG, you can pick HEC. Make sure that instead of entire album, you're picking just selected to pick, the ones that you've highlighted to do exports. Change resolutions. You can change bit depth of your export. One thing of note, for accurate monitoring, make sure that you are outputting, if you're on Mac, your stills as sRGB for output color, because if you output as Rec. 709, Mac OS does not like that. It does not like for stills to be in Rec. 709. In its internal logic, it wants stills to be sRGB. So it will crush the gamma if you export as Rec. 709 for stills. So make sure that your stills are being exported as sRGB, not as Rec. 709, as you can see here. And yeah, that should be it. Hope you have a fun time playing around with photos in Resolve. Get out and play with it.